Hola, good morning, buenos dias. I hope you are well, staying positive and focused on what you can control. Welcome to Cafecito con HACE and happy Women's History Month. This year, HACE's year-round theme is Avanza, Advancing Positive Impact, where momentum meets opportunity. Stay tuned on more information year-round on what this means, and especially for our National Leadership Summit, which is on April 25th and 26th, where we will feature tracks around advancing employee equity, advancing careers, and advancing social impact. Drop in where you are tuning in from in the chat and use this opportunity to network, to engage with one another, and to connect. My name is Patricia Mota, and I serve as President and CEO of HACE, the Hispanic Alliance for Career Enhancement, a national organization whose mission since 1982 is to positively impact workplaces by cultivating the community of Latino talent, providing the insight, access, and support to be successful in their careers. A quick few announcements before we jump in with our special guest today. I mentioned the summit. I know there's a special rate for tickets now, so please take advantage of that. Early bird ticket registration. And also, we are still promoting some of our programs. So if you're looking for career development, professional development, our inaugural HACE Colores LGBTQ+ program is accepting applications. So please check out the website. I know my colleagues will drop that information in the chat. So please check it out. So everyone, welcome to Cafecito. Please join me in welcoming my special guest, Dr. Damary Bonilla-Rodriguez, who is the founder and CEO of Dr. Damary Bonilla-Rodriguez and Associates. But she also wears other hats, such as serving on the board of ACLU, longtime leader of one of our peer organizations, Prospanica, the League of Women Voters of Pennsylvania, and the list goes on and on, right, Damary? Buenos dias.
Buenos dias. Isn't that what we do? We wear many hats and play many roles to do the work, right? To avanzar communities, as your mission and your summit say.
You surely do, Damary. And one of my many fond memories is you were one of the first individuals when I first started working at HACE and revamping our Mujeres de HACE, our Latina leadership program, who had research out there on Latinas. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that, but your most recent work as well. But first thing is first, a todos who are joining us, how do you like your cafecito or your morning beverage of choice? Y salud.
A mí me gusta light and sweet, and I love to try flavored creamer. So there's times that I like it just con leche y azúcar, and there are times that I love the sugar cookie and all of the different flavors and putting it in there and sweetening it up. And sometimes it's too sweet and I get the jitters. I'm like, all right, tone it down.
Con el azúcar, sugar cookie. Okay, I don't think I've heard that one. Maybe like I was thinking vanilla, but I'm sure there's all kinds of flavors out there.
French vanilla is a staple. You know, you have those like go-tos forever, but the sugar cookie one is addictive. So cuidado.
Watch out, everyone. Damary, so I know we've got a short time here and folks engaging in the chat, and I want to encourage everyone that's joining us to engage in the chat, network, ask your questions, and leverage this opportunity to connect with our guest today. Damary, tell us about your background, how you got to where you are today.
We don't have enough time for all of that, but thanks for the opportunity. I was born and raised in El Barrio in New York City, raised by my grandparents, and I always say that they would not be able to educate me in the space we are right now in terms of education and the needs of students, Latino students, students of color, because they went to the first and the third grade and they didn't navigate the language and they didn't have careers. You know, my grandmother was a stay-at-home mom and my grandfather was a factory worker. I'm the eldest of three sisters, and you know, by the grace of God and organizations like HACE and the work that you all do, I was able to access mentorship and support and be able to see women in professional spaces, coupled with seeing my tias and the people in my family working really hard to pay their bills and, you know, para salir adelante. I was able to access higher education. And that was my ticket out of the projects. I was raised in the projects in New York City, but I'm still very connected to that, right? My boys are growing up in a house in a gated community in the Pocono Mountains in Pennsylvania, but they're also familiar with the projects in New York City, with the life and the culture there. And so I'd say the way that I got to where I am is through access to higher education, formally, but then also informal through leadership development programs, through opportunities that I encourage people to take advantage of. Like today, right? You hop in for a couple minutes, you pick up some pearls of wisdom, you get some inspiration because you might be exhausted. And what are you going to do with that? How are you going to put that into action?
Yeah, and pick up some inspiration, I think is key. I know before we jumped on, we were having a conversation on everything that's going on, the rhetoric around DEI, and maybe we should have a whole nother session on that, because I know we can't get to all of that, but there's such a need for us to continue to support one another, have these conversations, to push forward and offer these kind of spaces. Where recently you published Modern Marianismo, its relevance and the connection to impostor syndrome and perfectionism. Readers will gain insight on how they can reach their full potential. And so tell us more about about the book, what inspired you to write the book, and any key learnings that you'd like to share with our audience.
First of all, I need to record you reading the title because you sound fabulous.
Oh,
So
thank you.
the book is an extension of my doctoral research, which, as you mentioned, focused on Latina leadership in the United States. And I coined a new term, modern Marianismo, which is the pivotal space where you decide what aspects of the Latino culture and nuances you're going to adopt, and what you're not, right? And what aspects of the American individualistic culture you're going to adopt and what you're not, and how those two merge. Because I was talking about right before we hopped on that not everything in our culture is bad or negative. And, some of what we were told growing up as young ladies that you had to do, I actually like to do. And I often talk about, I enjoy cleaning my house. It helps me relax. And there's likely a control factor too around it looks the way I like it to look, but also I'm providing this space for my family. And I always say that that's my love language. And so it took me a long time to get to the place to write the book, because some of these dynamics I've experienced as well, right? The feeling that I need to be the best mom, the best wife, the best employee, the best board member, the best, all of the different roles we mentioned in the beginning that we play. And that leads to a feeling of being perfectionist, and we don't always know that's what we're doing, but we're trying so hard. And when we don't do something, I mean, you may forget one thing and there's this pressure and this stress and this guilt. That's the perfectionism syndrome. And then it moves you to a space of, even when you're successful, you feel like you're lacking. You feel like they're going to figure out that I didn't do this, or I don't do that well, or and so getting to a point that you're very comfortable understanding the dynamics, being able to navigate the dynamics, and making a decision. It's daily, making a decision daily that this is how I'm going to work through it, and that I'm a work in progress. And it doesn't matter if you're the CEO of a company, it doesn't matter if you're a stay-at-home mom, it doesn't matter, if you're an educator, in any capacity, in any role, we all experience it. The other interesting learning that I had over the last decade plus since I've been doing the work is that women from other racial and ethnic backgrounds have said, wow, Marianismo gives me something to point to, because, I had a colleague who said, as a Black woman, we experience this too, but there's not a name for it. I've had Italian colleagues that have said, oh, that sounds a lot like the Italian culture, so that women across the board are able to connect. And my goal through the book is not just to sell the book, but to do exactly this, to create forums so that we're able to talk through it, and have people say, like they've been texting me the last couple of months, you experience imposter syndrome? I could never imagine. Yes, I'm one of less than 4% of 14 plus million Latinas age 18 and over who have a doctorate in the United States, and I experience imposter syndrome. And sometimes I feel like I fell off, right? Or I'm not the best mom or the best of whatever it is. And we're
So the
so hard on
latest is less
ourselves.
than 4% for PhD Dr. Latinas.
Yeah, that's good. Always updating on the data. So that's what it's about. It's really about ensuring that you embrace every aspect. And the book is a personal experience. I share my own experiences, and it's a coffee table book because I didn't want it to be academic. I didn't want it to be a long read. I want you to be able to open it and see. There's one point where I asked the question, have you ever felt exhausted? We all have, probably more often than we say it. So I want people to be able to open it and say, I see myself here. This is my experience as well. And I can work through it because I'm not the only one.
So many key nuggets there. So I hope, we can share information with our audience in terms of where they can get, this book and be able to enjoy it. So I know we'll be dropping that information here in the comment section or the chat section. But, I like to also call it that little voice in our head, right? That pops up, and learning how to manage or talk back to it on a daily basis, or as often as it pops up, right? And having those personal affirmations. And yes, I think even it doesn't matter your role or your title. I've shared that it pops up in my head quite often, and being able to have those affirmations, but also your circles of support, like folks that can, remind you or support you, or if you're not sure or you're feeling like, again, that perfectionism that creeps up, that you're not doing enough, you're not enough at the end of the day. To know that you are. And I think that that's such a critical conversation, especially when there's so much coming at us, right? So much pressure coming at in so many facets. So I love to see a lot of the engagement in the chat. I know we're dropping the information, and if you have any questions, please drop them in the chat. Tell me, Damary, I mentioned earlier that we had first connected because you were one of the first individuals that had published research on Latinas, right? And their influence and their trajectory and what they were experiencing. And for all of you joining in, that research coupled with other information that was done helped us, craft what Mujeres de HACE is today. And so, Damary, not only did you help in that aspect, but I know when we launched in New York, very involved and as an alum, how would you say this program has impacted you?
So one of the things I've loved about the HACE experience is the networking and navigation of negotiation skills. And, so when it comes to negotiation skills from a cultural lens, it's more challenging for people of color, for Latinos, and particularly for Latinas, right, as women, to be able to negotiate in the workplace when it comes to your salary, your package, but also to be able to negotiate in relationships, be able to negotiate if you are in a position of needing support, something, or providing support, etc. So I've been an elected and appointed official, and negotiation skills have been critical there. And I was very happy to be able to lead the negotiation session when we did launch the New York chapter, because that's giving back, right? And that's part of the networking that HACE is so good about offering, whether it's the summit, whether it's the conference, whether it's the cafecitos. Even in preparation for today, I'm like, oh, I know how it goes because I watch them, because we should always be accessing the networks, the conversations, growing, listening to others. And so all of those are part of the HACE experience, as well as that you can engage with people from different backgrounds, right? From different roles. And so some of the conversation that I'm talking about wanting to influence this year through my book, it will happen with the HACE network, because people here are going to be able to connect. And so there's an opportunity for you to share the work that you do, gain support. And one thing that you triggered for me that I wanted to point out when you were talking about, your support network, is letting people help you. And I've only learned that through accessing programs, experiences, and opportunities like Mujeres de HACE, like, as you mentioned, the work I've done with Prospanica, like continuing my own education formally and informally. Last year, I graduated from the Harwood Institute as a coach to help drive catalytic changes in communities across the country. And people ask me, why are you still going back to school? You have all these degrees. But it's not about the degrees. Those are fabulous. It's about, what am I learning? How do I continue to learn? How do I use that to be a voice for others? And how do I leverage the network? And all of that is part of the, not just Mujeres de HACE program, but HACE in general, right? It's the empowerment, the skill building, the educational piece, from a cultural lens. And there are lots of amazing programs and organizations, and I
Yeah.
work with many of them. And one thing I always say is, I don't share the information from one organization to the other in terms of knowledge capital. And I don't have to, because each one is meeting a different need. And there are differences that stand out. And the one thing I definitely always talk about with ASE is that negotiation piece that has been critical because of the cultural specific conversation that you're able to have.
Wonderful. We've got folks. Thank you, Damary. I know we've dropped the link to not only Damary's book, but also her profile so that you can connect with her and continue to engage with Damary on LinkedIn. We've got folks joining in from your own neck of the woods, Damary, as well. So it's good. Welcome. And then also LA. And then shout out to all of our Mujeres de HACE in New York, because I know you've connected with a lot of them and have built, community. And that's one of the things that we love with our cohort training programs, is providing the space where it becomes that safe space and that community that you can continue to engage with when you're having questions or need additional support. And I know we have a question from one of my colleagues, Lisandra, that's asking about how do you practice self-care to avoid burnout from trying to be everything to everyone? Any recommendation?
Lisandra, you are asking me the question that I have to ask myself regularly. And Patricia, we've talked about this over the years. You do have to ask yourself, what am I going to do in order to not burn out? Because when you burn out, you're no good to yourself and no good to anyone else, right? In all of the different places that you are part of. And so a couple of things I do, but one thing I do is once a month, my husband and I get a spa pedicure. And he gets very offended if I say that I'm going to go without him because my schedule is kind of crazy. And he's like, wait a minute, you're leaving me? All right, I'll wait. But, when it comes to that support, those are important opportunities to have a couple of minutes to relax, to, get a foot massage and have some conversation away from decisions and life. The other thing that I do is that I soak in a bath and just kind of let everything out, right? So I cry, I get frustrated, I do whatever I have to do to just get it out of my system, because if I don't, it's going to take root. One thing that I have learned in the past year is napping. Part of working through my own issue with Marianismo and being everything to everyone is that if my body is tired, I have to stop, because I would work in my sleep. I wake up with an event plan. I wake up with a report written, and I'm not sleeping. And you know what told me that was my smartwatch. It monitored that I was only deep sleeping for 43 minutes a night. And that was scary, because then your health suffers. And I knew it, but I continued to push through because I needed to be all of these things and people need me. Well, if I'm not well, I'm not going to be able to help them. So just being mindful of putting into practice what we tell others, because I've been very good over the years about saying, make sure that you take your self-care time, make sure you take good care of yourself. And now self-care looks like going to the doctor. I was texting with, one of my mentees a few days ago and saying, we need to hold each other accountable. Are you following up with your doctor's appointments? I am. This is what I'm doing. And making sure that I'm actually taking care of myself physically, mentally, and emotionally. But that is also a daily reminder, because there are days that I'm not as good at it as I am. And who's reminding you, right? Sometimes my husband tells me, stop, it's enough. And I have to flip the switch and say, you're right. And thank you for helping me. So again, your point of earlier, who's around you? How are you building that support network? Yeah.
The support, on the self-care, on the health, my reminder to myself is around my birthday every year is making sure all of those appointments are scheduled.
Yeah.
And that's what helps me, because the years go by and you're like, holy cow,
And what a gift. That's a gift for your birthday. I love that.
Exacto. That's how I look at it. So as much as I don't want to sometimes, right? Damary, we've got a few minutes here to wrap it up, and I feel like once we dig into this question, we might have to have like another full session.
Okay.
Tell our audience and those that are tuning in, what are you most hopeful for, a positive story that gives you hope for this year?
What gives me hope is people, but that's also what robs me of hope sometimes, right? People and the opportunity to connect in the way that we're connecting right now, right? Whether you're hopping in and just listening on the go, or whether you're asking a question and you're, really, really tuned in, or us, right, going back and forth and being vulnerable and just sharing so that others know that, we all experience these things. That gives me hope that we will be able to find support in each other, that we will be able to inspire each other, build each other up, and be in the fight together, the fight for social justice, the fight for, protecting DEI, as you brought up in the beginning, the fight for educational equity, for healthcare equity, for all of the needs that we have that ASA is so good about bringing to the forefront. But it also robs me of hope because we are in a presidential election year. And one of the things that happens is that people forget humanity and they're focusing on politics and politics over people. And there is anger and resentment. Oftentimes, people are defending candidates and individuals they don't even know personally against their own family, friends, loved ones, because they feel so strongly about an issue. But how about if we discuss the issue and we empower each other to be able to openly discuss, be able to disagree, but still be respectful? We can be heated. I always say I love a good debate. You convince me, I convince you. We meet somewhere, it might not be in the middle, or we leave exactamente como llegamos. But
Yeah.
let's do it, right? Because then we understand where each person is coming from. And so one of the things that I want to remain hopeful about is that people will understand the importance of engaging in this election, the importance of voting, and the importance of separating politics from people, because voting is a civic right and a civic responsibility. Politics is separate. Politics is that dirty thing that people do when they get into positions of power and they forget who they're supposed to be working for and who they're supposed to be working with and who they're supposed to be serving. Civic engagement is, I'm going to use my voice and vote for the person that I believe represents my values to the best, because nobody's perfect. No one person is going to meet all, your needs. But also thinking about, maybe I should run for office, or maybe I should be in a campaign, or how can I get involved? And that is all civic engagement. That's not politics.
Love it, love it. We have a session at ASA's National Summit around the vote this year. Again, not going on any side, but talking about the importance of practicing your civic responsibility through voting. There's other ways to do it, like you mentioned, right? If you're decide to run for office, if whether you're donating to campaigns, there's various ways to get involved, but making sure that you practice the vote, right, and that you are voting. Damary, we can go on forever. Unfortunately, we gotta wrap up. I know those of you tuning in, you're probably listening now, or you'll be listening later. This will be on our channel, so please share, continue to engage in the chat. And thank you for your time, your wisdom, your insights today, Damary. We appreciate you. Y todos, hasta la próxima. Until next time, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.